Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and we are joined today by my co-host, Joe748, and Magnum Wordsmith. How's it going, Magnum Wordsmith?
It's going great. Thank you guys for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. And it's been a fun story that you shared with me for a while. Excited to share it with other people. Joe748, how you doing?
Doing good. I got my Dunkin' Donuts coffee here because I'm back on the East Coast, and I forgot about the humidity.
Should we see if they'll be our sponsor, Dunkin'?
Yeah, we're already locked in with Denny's. We got a 10-year contract. So
that's right. Moon's over my hammy for days. Joe748, when was the last time you were in a casino?
That was probably a month ago. Actually, in Vegas at the boot camp.
Okay. Oh, you've been slacking.
Yeah.
What about you, Magnum Wordsmith? When was the last time you were in a casino? About
12 hours ago, actually. I just got back from a short AP trip.
Awesome. Well, glad one of us is still grinding. All right. Well, let's get into your story because this is a really fun, unique one. And take us from the top. How'd you get into blackjack and card counting and advantage play?
Sure. So my love for blackjack began when I was about 16 years old. Some cousins of mine had invited me to come over one weekend and just ride trails. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So the weekend rolls around. I'm all excited. We basically ride all day until we're sunburned. Just to draw a picture for you, I grew up kind of everywhere, but I went to 8 or 9 different schools. But I was born in a small town in Alabama and basically the middle of nowhere, dirt road, no cell service, hundreds of miles of woods. And so, we were in the world before, the internet and social media had taken over completely. But anyway, back to the story. Later that night, we're sitting around the kitchen table and someone's like, hey, you guys want to play some spare change blackjack and have some drinks? And me being at that age, I was like, yes, 1000%. I am down for that. So I was a broke teenager. I had 47 cents in my pocket and our little made up table max was $1. I couldn't even afford that. But anyway, I call it blackjack, but we kind of had our own house rules, I guess you could say. And it was a spinoff of blackjack. But so the first part of the night went well. I managed to stay alive. But as the night progressed, so did the liquid encouragement. And the latter part of the night, the drink started to get a hold of me and then things become fuzzy. And soon enough, I was rocked to sleep like a baby. Well, the next day I wake up and my pockets are clinking and they're full. So I stand up and I'm like, what is this? So I reach down into my pockets and there's just quarters and nickels and dimes falling over out of my hand. And my cousin's like, yeah, you jerk, you're the luckiest guy on the planet. You took everyone's money last night. And I was like, I did? They're like, yeah, you were playing really crazy, hitting hard 17s and hard 18s. And I had zero recollection of any of it. But yeah, that was kind of the dangerous ploppy seed that was planted in my head that day because I thought, I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life. I'll play, this blackjack game and I won't have to work. So
Step 1, get drunk. Step 2, win at blackjack.
Yep. So now fast forward, I don't know, a lot of years later to the year 2017. So at this point, I'm in an established rock band and we have landed a gig at a casino. So I won't name the casino, but I will say it was in the state of Louisiana. So we were scheduled to do a back-to-back, over the weekend show here in this Louisiana casino. The night before, we had driven all night to get there really early in the morning. So we get there early in the morning, we take a power nap after we check in, and then we head on over to the casino and, start shaking hands and greeting the entertainment department from the casino. And we do a sound check. They're pleased. We're pleased. Everybody is happy. And there's, rapport being built and smiles are growing. So everything's going good. Well, we play the show. And at the end of the night, I had walked up to our band manager / accountant. And I was like, I'd really like to be able to contribute. And I was like, I have an idea. And she was like, okay, what's the idea? And I'm like, well, when I was 16, I played blackjack and won a lot of money. So I think I can do that here too. I was like, but, I'm a broke musician. So if you want to give me $400, I'll go turn it into a lot of money. So what could possibly go wrong? So the first night, it actually went well. I got really drunk and lucky again and won $700. So the second night that we played at this same casino, lots of fun, lots of drinks again. And still, I had a continued winning streak. I made a total over those 2 nights of $1,500. So like at this point, I had already looked into like a little bit of basic strategy, and I watched a random YouTube video for like 30 seconds on how to count cards, but it was like a conjecture understanding. So I don't know if I had a winning game or not, but I thought I did, and that was all that mattered. I had made $1,500, and the accountant was happy, the band was happy. So, some APs play where they stay, where I was playing where I was playing, where I was staying.
And I'm sure that you didn't have a winning game at that point.
Yeah, no, looking back, and I actually remember the game that I was playing was I remember I had a $400 bankroll to start off on the first night, and it was like a $10 table. It was like double deck, and they cut off like a whole deck. You could resplit aces, but like you couldn't split and double on every other hand. It was weird. So my risk of ruin was probably like 99%, but maybe the alcohol helped that. I had, beer goggles with risk of ruin, I guess. But so this story does not end here. My winning streak of bad play continues. Later the year, in 2017, my confidence was just kind of through the roof. And so was the accountant. She was like, I'm going to give you some more money, and you can go make me more money and the band more money with this blackjack, stuff that you're doing. And so I call it my local, but it's about 3 hours away. When you're in Alabama, there are no casinos here. We have like what I like to call the off-brand casinos, but there's no table games. So 3, 4, 5 hours away is what I have to do to even get to a casino with blackjack. But so I go to this casino in Mississippi. And at this point, I began kind of experimenting with like using side counts and stuff, just because, I had this false sense of confidence that I was winning, but it was more or less a delusion. So I go into the casino and I'm like, I see this side bet. It's progressive for like the jackpot pays like $70,000 and it's blazing sevens. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this halfway card counting, system that I had been doing. And then I'm also going to keep track of the sevens. To my amazement, after a 21-hour session of just drinking alcohol and like also switching to coffee after, at about 6 o'clock in the morning, I was like, well, about 70% of the cards have been dealt. That was just a wild guess. And there was very few of the sevens that had been dealt. So I placed the $5 bet on the progressive little lit up button there, whatever you want to call it. And I get my first seven, and it's a 7 of hearts. And I was like, I just kind of laughed. And then so the dealer goes all the way around the table and gets back to me and hands me another 7 of hearts. And at this point, like my heart is pounding, like it feels like it's going to come out of my chest. And she gets to her and she peeks over to the right and she looks at me and her eyes widen, and like it was the 7 of hearts. And I swear that I stopped breathing for about 5 seconds. Again, I was some like broke musician, broke kid, like 47 cents in my pocket from years ago. And now I've just won like over 70 grand. So I like messaged my accountant. I was like, you got to hurry up and get down here. And they're like, no, get off your phone. You can't have your phone on the table because they're, they might try to, this was some ploppy talking to me. He was like, they're going to try to keep the money away from you. But they did pay me. And yeah, so after, I don't remember how much it was after taxes, but it didn't matter because I was ecstatic.
So you said it was 70,000 was the progressive jackpot?
Yeah, I think it was 76,000 with the progressive.
And you don't remember what it was after tax?
I think it was somewhere in the 55 to 60 range. I don't know. They took out a solid chunk.
How much did you tip?
Oh man. Okay. So after a alcohol coffee infused level of excitement, I not only tipped the dealer $1,000, but I jokingly had told the other players at the table that if I were to hit this jackpot, that I would tip everybody $1,000. I was just joking. And so I had to hand out $3,000 in tips because I was a man of my word.
Oh my gosh. This is why casinos exist, because absolute ploppies do get lucky sometimes.
Yep.
And hit it big. And then it's game on. The casino's like, oh, we've got a lifer here.
Yeah, I was the blind squirrel that happened to find a nut that day.
Oh man. Okay. So how did that get you into card counting? That's how it got you into gambling at blackjack. Where did it go from there?
So now at this point, I want to keep playing blackjack. And over the span of the next several months, almost all of it vanishes because I was just losing. And I had realized that I had a losing game. So I had been talking about blackjack. And the weird thing was like I was on Facebook one day. And I guess how sometimes your phones just kind of spy on you. Well, one day I got on Facebook after talking about Blackjack, and Colin, your Facebook profile popped up in my suggestion feed.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just something about Blackjack, and I seen it, and I was like, okay, well, what's this Blackjack apprenticeship? So I checked it out, and at the time I was like, dang, I sure wish I didn't lose all that money that I just won. I could have went to this Blackjack apprenticeship, but I'm broke again. Or not broke, but I was on peanuts at that point. Yeah, so we went out on the road again, and eventually at some point, I'm not going to go into this story, but I ended up becoming a father. So that was another jackpot that I had hit, another type of jackpot. But so now to get to the meat and potatoes of the story, I had seen my son's mother was playing some game on her phone, and it was called Diamond Strike, and it was a skills game. And I was like, what is this? And she's like, yeah, I'm playing a game on my phone. This company, Skills, they have all sorts of different games, but they have like a blackjack game, and you should try it. And so I ended up scrambling through I think they have over 150 different games, and I had found a game called 21 Blitz. And so I downloaded the game, and I was like, I know a little bit about counting, so I'm going to try this here. And at first I had tried the practice game, so I didn't deposit anything, but I had developed another false sense of confidence, and I was being lured in at the time. I didn't know that. I would deposit probably about a few $1,000s, and I did well at first, but then I ended up losing it all. And at this point, I was like, okay, if I'm losing at blackjack and if I'm losing in this game, something must be wrong. And I was like, I'm going to get serious about this. And at first, I had just scrounged up enough information of blackjack with high-low and basic strategy. I would still say that I wasn't at all a perfect player, but I was like, I don't know if this is going to help me on 21 Blitz. So I started a long journey of building my own counting system for 21 Blitz. And I'm not going to give it away, but I'll say it's like a hybrid of a counting system and imagery using some sort of emotionally charged memory or an absurdity of an image. You just think about, I don't know, a clown doing a backflip through just something really absurd.
So memory palace stuff.
Yes, so a memory palace on on one hand, and then an actual counting system on the other. So I was kind of juggling both. At first, I only added aces and twos, and then I noticed that I started beating some of the more strong players. And then I added in threes and fours, and eventually I would get a solid chunk. But so after about 2 or 3 false starts, I had roughly $300 in my account, and I said, okay, this is the final attempt that I'm going to do. And if it doesn't work, I'm done with counting cards. I'm going to go get a full-time job, and I'm just going to accept reality for what it is. Well, that didn't happen, and I kept making money. So I was playing really, really very tiny stakes with $300. The smallest game possible was a 60-cent entry fee that you could do. And so I was putting together peanuts, and eventually my bankroll started to grow and grow and grow. And as my bankroll grew, so with 21 Blitz, there's a pairing system. There's an echelon position to where basically the better you get, you're going to play players of similar skill level as you, right? So the better you do, it just keeps going up and up and up and up. So, at some point I had reached playing the elite players, and these guys were I don't think they were counting cards, but they were I know one of the guys, he actually went to college for, he was a math major or whatever. So he had some sort of strategy approach. Maybe he ran simulations or something. I really don't know. But he was one of my hardest opponents. And eventually I would pass him. But that was because I had pushed my memory palace / counting system all the way up to a maximum of 38 cards. So I was strategizing while playing and juggling 38 individual cards in my head.
So we got to back up here. There's a lot I want to get to. First, going back to the Facebook thing, just to put it out there, we're not spying on people, but how it works is you obviously were researching, we do. It's called retargeting. So if someone's been to blackjackapprenticeship.com something 3 times or 5 times or something like that, then Facebook might say oh, hey, you're interested in this. So you were researching and you were getting into it. Did you have high-low down at that point?
Yes. I mean, I didn't have anybody evaluating my game, but I did have it down.
Okay. So that's the first thing is, because you said you created kind of hybrid. So you had at least learned one count. Well, were you already into memory techniques?
So the memory or the counting system that I built had nothing to do with high-low.
Yeah. But you were familiar with a, effective removal system. which, all card counting systems are effective removal. Like, hey, if we remove a 2, what happens? If we move an ace, what happens? You're familiar with that, but then were you familiar with, memory techniques, memory palace type stuff? For those listening that have no idea what we're talking about, like even sequencing that skill in blackjack, which is like really kind of an antiquated skill at this point, but blackjack players didn't invent it. They just took the techniques of people that could memorize a deck of cards, or could memorize you could memorize anything, like a grocery list of 20 items using these techniques. So these techniques have been around for quite a while, but is that something you were already into?
I had honestly just seen a random YouTube video about memory palace, but as far as like extending into some sort of other counting system or memory technique, not really. I only kind of halfway understood memory palace, but
you were able to do, was it like person, object, action, or anything like that?
It wasn't so much of like it's weird because you say that, because I've heard them called statements, which is, I guess, is the same thing as would you say person, object, action?
Yeah, it's like person, action, object, or person, object, action.
I don't want to say what I do, but it's not quite that. It's something similar.
Okay. And so did you know with 21 Blitz, is it a 52 card deck each time, or how does that work?
Okay, so take a standard 52 card deck, but the only exception is 2 of the jacks are replaced with wilds. And so like these wilds, they're either like, they can be used for clearing a stack. Like imagine if you had like, I don't know, like a 19 and you needed to get it out of the way. This wild, because like 21 Blitz is not blackjack. I want to be clear about that. It's a completely different animal. But yeah, the wilds are basically just like 2 cards that replace jacks.
Can you give us a quick overview of the format of the game? Or just like the gameplay, like how does the actual game work you're playing against?
Okay, so the goal of 21 Blitz is like the straightforward goal is simple. You're trying to accumulate more points than your opponent. And you do that by, so like you and another opponent are going to play the exact same deck and like dealt out in the exact same way. Like a 10 ace 2 is being dealt to me, a 10 ace 2 is being dealt to you. And so there are different ways to accumulate points in the game. And there is the obvious, which is like, a 21, which, you guys would call a blackjack. And then there are 5-card piles. Now, the 5-card pile can either equate to 21 or as long as it doesn't bust. And then you can take a wild, which you can put a wild literally anywhere. But the best way to accumulate points in 21 Blitz is something called streaks. And a streak is like a consecutive notion from, let's say, one or the other of like a 21 to a 5-card pile or 21 to another 21, right? So not only are you needing to count cards and have a strategy, you need to be able to have consecutive 21s or consecutive streaks. And then there is an actual like time bonus. The time bonus doesn't really have an impact until you make it to like the extremes, to where like if you imagine like a rubber band, and you're pulling this rubber band tighter and tighter and tighter. Well, the further out you stretch the rubber band, the more energy it takes to actually stretch the rubber band further. So at that level, the time bonus begins to have an effect, because like 1 second of time equates to 10 seconds. And so I've actually lost by 1 point before, which would imply 1/10 of a second. And that actually does happen.
You were playing the game and intuitively saw the way the points accumulate. If you know what exact cards have and haven't been played, you were able to come up with a system to track those to give yourself a greater chance of getting points.
So like I hear a lot of, I don't want to jump there yet, but basically my edge most of the time was at like 60% or more like into the actual deck, if that makes sense. Like the further into the deck, like the quote unquote obstacles that are out of the way, I can have a more accurate reading of what's left and how I can sort of manipulate the deck of cards, or the remaining composition, because I'm not playing like playing a casino dealer. I'm playing another human being. So I don't have to beat the casino or the house, so to speak. I mean, there is a rake involved in like, that's a different topic to discuss, but like, I just have to be smarter, stronger, and faster than my opponent.
Well, what's crazy is you continually have to be strong. Like they're going to just keep giving you tougher opponents.
Right. It actually goes further than that. It's just crazy. So eventually, like, I mentioned the echelon position. Eventually, you're going to reach like some sort of theoretical roof. And when that happens, by this point, obviously, this is under the assumption you're a profiting player. What they did to me was they removed like certain promotional deposits that sort of like ease like the necessary win percentage, and then they began to remove my like these sort of like things that you earn with like trophies and cash payouts. It's like all these different bonuses and like special events, and they start to remove them from someone who's profiting because you're profiting. So like, I'm not going to like dive into like similarities between back offs and countermeasure, but like that's kind of like how they quote unquote countermeasure you.
So going back to gaining the edge, was it simply just by playing endless hours of this, you developed your skill, or did you say, okay, here's my system, I'm going to practice it, not playing the game, I'm just going to practice it, with the deck of cards for 100 hours?
Currently, I have about 6,000 hours of actual playtime or practice time, and I've played close roughly to 90 to 100,000 games.
But all of your practice hours were actually playing the game?
Yes. So most of my time I was just spending on like trying to find, the best way I can explain it is trying to find the sweet spot between conservative and aggressive approach. And like, if you wait until the end of the deck to like go for it, so to speak, like really push for like a longer streak. If someone can do that, like a little bit before you do that, like let's say I wait until 80% of the deck has passed and there's 20% remaining. If someone else can do that at 40% remaining, they're going to be able to push further, for more streaks and just play more aggressively. I don't know if that makes sense. This is really hard to explain without like,
Yeah, that makes sense. How does the app like prevent people from like using computers to cheat or anything? Is there any kind of like monitoring of that or?
Yes. So if you were to profit, regardless of how you're doing it, you will reach a point to where the trust and safety agents will want to do a live verification for you. So I have done 6 different live video verification calls with 2 device recordings. And like, I don't know if there's 3 different options for them wanting to do that. Option A would be the fact that they have to do it for some sort of legal reason, like every time they change their terms of service, which I don't understand that, but that's what they've claimed. Option B is they just want you to be able to, like, I guess, prove, like, that you're legitimate. And then option C is maybe there's some sort of financial checkpoint when you reach, they just have to do it. Like if you're playing blackjack and if you reach a certain threshold, like they're going to count you down. Maybe it's something similar to that.
Wow. So you get to your last $300 and this is such a unique story. I feel like I'm talking to someone that figured out card counting before before Beat the Dealer or something. You're down to your last $300. You think that you can beat your opponents in this esports app and develop your own system. You say, I'm going to go for it, and you just start winning. And then they put you against tougher opponents and you just keep winning. But like, did you have streaks, like losing streaks, winning streaks?
Yes, I did. So the like winning streaks and like, I guess you could say the variance of 21 Blitz is a little bit different than like blackjack, because like in blackjack, if you just have if you have a proven winning game in blackjack, and if you're losing and you're playing 100% perfectly, like that's just variance. But with 21 Blitz, like I'm the only person that can verify my game. So I have to make sure that I'm not allowing my ego to distort or manipulate, like my strategy or whatever. As I'm playing, like I've had losing streaks before, but every time they happen, I'm terrified that maybe someone else has became like another version of me.
You might get to a level where you just can't beat the competition anymore.
Yes. As arrogant as this may seem, if someone were to be able to beat me consistently, I would have concern that, I would just want proof that they're doing what I'm doing, because I know that it took me, thousands of hours and like tens of thousands of games and going to an extreme level. Like this game had basically taken over my life. I was averaging about 12 hours a day and sometimes more just practicing and playing.
Wow. And so what's a losing streak look like financially and hours wise?
So the biggest losing streak I've ever had was about, I don't know what it is in units, because like just the payout system and everything else is different. But I've had like a $9,000 downswing, and it took me probably about And when I'm talking about hours, I'm talking about me trying to figure out like what I was doing wrong or if someone else was beating me. And it would take me about like probably 2 or 3 days of just like going through and watching video replays, dissecting everything, and like every single card placement, like every individual card, I was asking, was this the correct decision, and why or why not? Was it? So I always felt like everything, even to this day, feels like a constant science experiment. Like I'm always trying to make sure that I have every possible, that even the tiniest edge, I want to make sure that I have, because it makes a difference in the end.
Is this like a US-based company or is it overseas? Like, how does the whole payout thing work? Like, is it only legal in some states or is there a loophole? Like, yeah.
Yes. So I actually have a story of where it was illegal in a state and I had to rush. I won't go into that, but I had to like literally leave an AP meetup and like rush back across the state line to get into like a rest area to where I could get back to the game.
Oh, wow.
So I think skills, which is, so just to touch base, because everyone listening doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about. There's 3 different things to name. So 21 Blitz, Skills, and Tether Studios. So Tether Studios is the developer of the game 21 Blitz. Skills is the esports platform that monetizes these games. Okay, so Skills, I believe they're based out of, I think it's California. I might be wrong. But as far as the actual competition pool, it's a global thing. The last time I checked, it covers like 80% of the world. There are certain states. To be honest, I'm actually amazed that Alabama allowed this to be legal, because we are very much against casinos and whatnot. But I've competed against people from like Nepal, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, India. I've had competition from all over. So, and I don't have like a special piece of paper that says Magnum Wordsmith is #1 Blitz player. You guys will just have to take my word. But yeah, the competition is basically global.
And so, starting with $300, where's it taken you?
Yeah, so I went from $300 to $650,000 total profits, all in my pajamas.
Yes.
Jeez. And that's over the course of how many hours did you say? 6,000?
Yeah, about 6,000. I actually believe it's more, but I didn't really have proper logs in the beginning. I would say it's closer to 7, but I don't want to give myself too much credit. But 6,000, that's 100% accurate. It's probably more than that, but at least 6,000.
How many hours in do you think you were positive EV?
I had always told myself that I would play about 2,000 or 3,000 practice games. I'm trying to think about that answer because I really don't know. But if I had to guess, it would be about maybe more like 300 to 400 hours in, because in the very, very beginning, I was trying to juggle learning how to play and doing a job. So to gain an edge with this game, you're going to have to suffer for a while. I would honestly not suggest this game to most people. This is like an advertisement that you see and you're like, yeah, that game's probably a scam. That's the type of game that this is. Obviously it's not and it's doable, but you have to go to an extreme measure.
Yeah. I mean, there's no Blitz 21 apprenticeship or, Blitz 21 by Ed Thorpe. You have to figure this out from scratch. I'm actually surprised you're saying, 300 to 500 hours. I wouldn't be surprised if you would have said 1,000 or something like that, because you're developing and perfecting a system just absolutely from scratch. I wonder how many people have tried and just they couldn't develop a system. Probably countless people.
Oh yeah, the Skills has had millions of players, but that doesn't equate to just 21 Blitz. But I know that there's been probably several hundred thousands of players. I actually don't know how old 21 Blitz is, but I do know that Skills has been around for probably a decade. So they've had millions of players. And if I had to just make a wild guess, I would say the amount of people who actually turn a profit would only be about 1% to 2%, and that's being generous.
Well, they've designed the game in a way that once someone's profitable, they're going to put you against someone tougher, so that person, it's almost like exponentially difficult to be profitable, because they just want the rake. If they can have 2 people of equal skill against each other and they're going to take a rake, they're good. That keeps the average person always at about a break, just under break even. So it's like a casino. Everybody's losing so little, they'll just keep gambling, If someone's like always getting crushed, they'll stop playing. And if someone's always winning, then, they're not maximizing their opportunity to have equal, just kind of take a little bit of money from every person. So it's smart how they designed it, but that means it's exponentially difficult to be an AP at this.
So like, not only do they do everything that you just said, but something that I've noticed about me is like, so during 1 month of 2021, it's crazy because like during the pandemic and like a little bit before and after, I had actually made more money in my life than like I could ever dream of. And it's because everybody was at home. And so everybody was on their phones or on the internet or doing whatever. So I honestly think that part of my profit was getting like just great timing with, being on my phone while everyone else was on my phone. Because to profit on this game, someone has to lose for someone to win. And even if you reach the theoretical roof of the echelon, there are sort of like measures that the system can do. So like, for example, if I score something really high and the system has to put my game into like a pending circle because it has to wait for somebody else to reach the same level as me, what they can actually do is put you against a completely like just a complete moron of a player that plays so horribly wrong that like they have a streak of luck and it works out. And so if me playing from like a practical and logical standpoint tries to play the same way that they did, it's not going to work. And I'm actually going to be the one that gets crushed because I played smart and not dumb. And the answer to that deck was to play dumb, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain.
Interesting. I mean, over the long term, you're going to crush those people. But
right. Yeah.
So you're spending 12 hours a day at one point playing this. What the heck are you doing with card counting? Like, why did you continue to pursue that? I mean, people listening maybe don't know that you continue to pursue it, but you've been a member, you've been to a boot camp, you've been to a member of BJA for a few years now. Why other AP stuff? Just love blackjack that much?
Yeah, I think the only reason I found success was just because of my passion for blackjack and counting. But like once I had made enough money off of 21 Bliss, I was like, all right, now I need to like work on my blackjack game. And that's when I went back to YouTube and I started watching some of the blackjack apprenticeship videos. And I was like, okay, so time to get on a plane and go out west and, make sure my blackjack game is good to go. So I paid for the boot camp. And so fun fact, I did not know surrender existed in the United States until I was on the plane ride out to the BJA boot camp.
Funny. And your game was good. I remember that at the boot camp. So you'd clearly worked on traditional blackjack skills as well. Have you always been just like kind of that dialed in? I don't know. I mean this as a compliment, but like obsessive about the things you get into?
Yes, I am not be kind of good at a few things. I would rather try to be a specialist at like, one or two things. And music, specifically like the guitar and like blackjack / card counting have always been my picks,
Yeah, I was going to say that about music because you sent me some recordings of the band you were in and it was like, oh yeah, this is a very technically proficient, style of music that takes someone. I played guitar and there was a point where I would practice an hour a day, but there was this guy that was a couple apartments away from me in college that, I mean, he probably practiced 3 hours a day and he could just absolutely shred. And I was like, yeah, I just don't have it in me to be that disciplined or that dialed in, but it seems like you do.
Yeah, I think too, like, rather it's blackjack with, counting cards or music, you really have to stick with it. And I don't want to say you can't have a life, but it's going to be very difficult to have a life and to be like proficiently technical,
With 21 Blitz, you mean? I mean, yeah, card counting, there's a nice thing about it. Once you have the system down, as long as you're playing casinos that are, have a beatable game, you have an edge. But man, with the 21 Blitz stuff, I would think, the level of skill to continually beat better opponents, it's a whole lot. I was even thinking about poker. With poker, you beat that by just finding lesser competition. And if you get to limits or you find yourself in a table where you're worse, you're the, lesser competition, you got to leave that and find limits or tables with lesser competition. With this, they're always going to find the better competition for you. So it's just such a challenge. But with your obsessive personality, you were up for that challenge.
Yeah, and like you can't even just be like, I guess it depends on the rake of whatever game you're playing, but like in a head-to-head competition, just off the top, the rake is like 16% in 21 Blitz. And now there are different like sort of payouts. Like you can win the game, and then if you win, like you get trophies which push you higher on the league payout systems. Whether you win or lose, you get tickets which can be exchanged for bonus cash, but you really, really have to know the system to be able to get that return. It's still a very steep rake to overcome.
That's the whole other part of it, where it's just you have your count system, and that's one skill, and then the second skill is figuring out all the different pay structures and everything. It's sort of, but one of what you mentioned earlier, that's always been one of my fantasies, is to like be one of those bands that play at the casino, and then right after their performance, they go to the high limit room and they're being treated like kings. And then all of a sudden you start counting and they freak out and they just don't know what to do with themselves because you have to perform tomorrow. That is one of my fantasies. I don't play any instruments and I'm not going to learn just to fulfill that, but I hope that you one day are in that position.
I used to think about that. Like Jerry Seinfeld is performing at Caesar's Palace and he's like, hey, I want, a $1,000 minimum and a $20,000 max table.
Look at all these low cards. There's high cards.
What is the deal? Like, what would they do? They'd be like, hey, you can perform, but we're not going to let you play blackjack. I just want to know what would happen.
I think I was just too low of stakes at the time. I didn't have the bankroll, so maybe they were just like, $400 is not going to do much.
I don't think they were worried about you at all. But yeah. So you came to a boot camp and you said you were in a casino 12 hours ago. Have you pursued other advantage play because you see there's a limit to what you can do with 21 Blitz, or is it like, hey, I just got to do something else. I want to do some other skills other than play this app, or what's the motivation?
So there is good motivation, and then there are consequences that have kind of pushed me away from 21 Blitz. So the first thing was after I went into the BJA boot camp as just like a card counter, but I left as an AP. Like my mind was kind of blown after just learning so much and seeing things through a completely different lens. Instead of just being like this competitive guy that wanted to create this very difficult sort of strategy and accounting system, I began to see things as like, is this plus EV or minus EV? And just sort of broadening my parameters, so to speak. But now that so much time has passed, 21 Blitz has kind of died down. I think it had a lot to do with once the country started to open up again, people got off of their phones and went out and, went back to the bars, went back to see their friends and family, and just basically just got out of the house. So I was like, okay, this game is dying, and my hourly, even if I don't know the EV per se, like my hourly was probably around the range of and this is very rough, it was like $400 or $500 an hour. But now it's gotten down to maybe $90 to $100 an hour, because the pool of competition has separated. All of the middle ground people got destroyed, and now there's only completely new players and the elites of the elites remaining. And so the liquidity pool has been it's went down 80%. And not to mention my health deteriorating. If you're inside your house 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years, sometime in this, I don't know if it was the summer of 2021, but I had my best month ever. I had made $50,000 in 1 month, but there was a 10-day tournament. And this was at the point that I knew I had to eventually get away from this. But there was a 10-day tournament, and I was playing against whales. And so this is difficult to explain without someone having the knowledge of how the system works. But whales can lose more than you do, but they can play at such a rate to where their volume of trophy gains. How do I explain this? Just basically a whale can buy their way into their first position of the league.
Sure. Why wouldn't they offer that? Right.
And so they kind of put me like eventually you'll reach a point to where like even if you're playing a game, you're going to go to like a sort of like a pending and it's going to wait in the system. And since you're at the roof of the echelon, the system has to wait for someone to come up to your skill level, which means I guess you could say your rounds per hour start to slow down. But I had played 19 hours, 3 days in a row. And on the third day, like I actually had an anxiety attack during the middle of a game. Like 2 seconds, I just quit breathing. And I was like, I dropped my phone, went and looked in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. And I was like having like intermittent auditory hallucinations because like I was just pushing myself so hard. Like my diet consisted of like sleeping, coffee, and 21 Blitz. That's all I ate.
So this story arc is so fascinating to me. How many people would develop a system for this? But then also there's the luck involved of it happening during COVID where everybody's at home on their phones. And, you reach a point where you're making or generating 400 or 500 an hour playing the game. But, like a lot of forms of advantage play, there's that point, and you never know when you're at the peak of something, but then there's diminishing returns or often either something changes, diminishing returns, and just burnout, like absolute burnout. And so you went through that entire story arc with this game. Do you still play?
I do, but things have just dwindled down to peanuts, and like this game affected my health like pretty bad. Like I have pretty bad posture at this point. I went to like my primary care doctor. I went to a couple of orthopedic surgeons and like talked with them. I've talked with like different chiropractors. And so my right side trapezius muscle, I think the doctor said it had to do with how I was sitting and holding my phone. Like an iPhone is not heavy, but if you're holding it 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, over time, especially after 2 years, it just wears and tears on your muscles. But like I've had some actual health issues from just pushing so hard. And so I just like if anyone actually downloads the game and you go on there, you might see me and you might catch me in the chat, but like I just don't play as much as I used to.
And then you've transitioned into more in casino advantage play.
Yes.
Did you ever have any like issues with your thumbs or any kind of carpal tunnel or something like that?
Yes. So I have a funny little story. After the boot camp, I had went out and started to like kind of build a network with different APs, and we had a meetup. And I was dealing the cards, and every time I would deal someone a card, my right arm would pop. And they kept asking me, like, why is your arm popping? It's like, well, it's this game I used to play called 21 Blitz. I made a lot of money off of it. And like, okay, so, but it's affected me in good and, positive and negative ways.
So any plans to start a 21 Blitz apprenticeship?
Yeah, I've thought about it, but I really don't know how I would go about explaining the game. And if I were to do the 21 Blitz apprenticeship, basically only like a very, very tiny percentage of people would even be able to profit, because if, let's say, 10 people want to play in the same wager that I'm playing, eventually the echelon is going to place you against me, and then that's not going to work.
So at this point, how many hours are you putting into advantage play a month?
Probably about, at this point, like 100 to 200. Like I'm still occasionally playing 21 Blitz, so I haven't fully transitioned, but like as like every, like, I guess 6 months, I'm transitioning more and more into casino life, especially since I've sort of like expanded my horizon with different advantage plays, not just limited to blackjack.
Uh-huh. You said 100, 200 a month?
Yes.
And how's that working with family life?
It's pretty good. I'm a dad. And so like, my son's mother and I, we get along very well. I am super grateful to have someone as great as her with like co-parenting and everything else. So like whenever, I'm with my son, like I focus on spending all of that time with him. And now that I have the financial freedom to do that, I can actually enjoy the time with him. And so like, but whenever it's just me, I just stay on the road. But I've also had the ability to, help my family and even some of my friends. And so as I continue to do all this, I've done a better job of juggling family life and friends and not just going obsessive. That's been the hardest part, is turning off that obsessive light switch.
Yeah, totally. I've thought about that. How different would I have been if I, I was married when I started counting cards. If I'd, yeah, might look a little different. Because I think I can get a little obsessive too. Not at the skill level of you, but in a different way. Awesome. Anything else you want to share with us? I know it's been almost an hour, so probably should wrap it up here. But anything else you want to share with us?
Just remember that healthy is wealthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for saying that. And just for people to figure out, how any form of advantage play serves where they're trying to get. And it doesn't become a thing that's inhibiting where you're trying to get. Any pro tips on that, on healthy being wealthy?
Just kind of the basic things that I never thought about. Go outside, get sunlight, drink water, ease up on the coffee. I'm super guilty of that. And get lots of rest. I know that sounds really like obvious, but it took me 2 years of suffering to understand.
Yeah, I think that would be so tempting for anyone. Like if you're making at the beginning like $400, $500 an hour from home, I think I would do the exact same thing. Like I would play as much as possible because it's so easy. It's not like you have to drive 3 hours to a casino to make $500 an hour. It's like it's right there all day long.
Oh man, totally. And just play one more game. Just play one more game.
Yes, that is a famous quote in the 21 Blitz community.
That would be really tough. I read recently that they're putting sleep on the same level as major risk factors for people, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, poor sleep. It is super important. And it's very easy as an AP to not prioritize sleep.
Yeah. And too much sitting is bad too.
Thanks for sharing your story. It's such a unique one and it's really cool. And I'm glad that, glad for the success, but also that you've had the courage to say, hey, look, there's healthier ways to spend my time than it just 19 hours a day of playing on your phone.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for sharing your story. If people want to learn more about beating blackjack in casinos, check out blackjackapprenticeship.com, and you can even find Magnum Wordsmith, Joe748, and myself in the membership area.
And also be on the lookout for my mini dumbbell for your thumbs. I'm going to create some tiny thumb dumbbells to help ease the pain.
Yeah. So 748's tiny dumbbells. Coming soon to Amazon and everywhere else you can find tiny dumbbells. All right. Have a great day, and we'll catch you guys next time.